Hello, and welcome back to our online series, Spiritual Technology to Awaken You to Your Life's Purpose. This is about where scientific principles and spirituality come into convergence as one. And I am super excited to have our guest today, Miss Penney Peirce, with us today. Penney is a spiritual teacher, a clairvoyant, an empath, and most importantly, also a best-selling author of multiple books, including Transparency, Seeing Through to Our Expanded Human Capacity, Leap of Perception, Frequency, The Power of Personal Vibration, and so many more. You can read all about Penney here on her bio, as well as links to her sites and to her books and more information. Penney, welcome, and thank you so much for being part of this conversation and online series.
Well, thanks for inviting me, because, these are my favorite topics.
I know. I mean, I'm just like, is there anything else really to talk about? And I'll just set it up. I've been working on creating the unification and languaging around how we combine science and spirituality as one, and why that's important. So I'd love to start with your feelings on, why is it important that we kind of view these things as connected, and how do we continually bring them into oneness, and what does that do for the individual?
Well, I think part of it is that's what's happening right now is a kind of the acceleration of energy on the planet, and what that does is it's causing the mind to go faster, the physical plane to go faster, the emotions to go faster. And what that does is it's causing us to be able to feel more and more of the non-physical realm. So in other words, it's as though the physical world starts to approach the spiritual world, and then we start to see that they're actually integrated. Right. And so what I always think of when I start seeing this happening is that metaphysics and physics always used to be so separate, right? But they really aren't. They're just different frequencies of the same universal laws.
I love that.
And so, and we could call it science and spirituality, but really it's the understanding of the universal laws and principles, that how the non-physical realm actually gives rise to the physical realm. Yes. That it's inside of it. It's the inner blueprint, as I call it often. And why is it important? It's like we are learning to overcome fear now, because it's such a low, slow vibration. And we're starting to realize that we are souls, that we are operating naturally, effortlessly from universal principles that are innately harmonious and innately loving. And then if we get that, and then we start treating each other that way, then our organizational systems change, our government can change, the way the whole physical world can change, because we'll be acting more out of compassion and mutual respect, and then it goes on and on. I mean, the implications are amazing.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing is this acceleration, this vibrational frequency, literally energetic vibrational frequency that's accelerating on the planet, is creating a union between the non-physical and physical worlds. And that when we experience this union, it allows us to move through fear, or lessen our fear in recognition for who and what we truly are, love, souls, all of that. And that allows us then to create a external world reality from a whole new perspective.
That's right. That's right. It's actually, that the spirit, that the spiritual realm, or the non-physical, has always been inside the physical. That is true. All, spiritual people throughout history, or you had to be an initiate probably in a temple or something in order to understand this fully. But it's always been so. But we are now approaching the kind of consciousness where the masses are starting to understand this. It's not just a selected few.
Yes, right.
And that's what's changing things now. It's a globalization.
Yeah, what I love is, Einstein always referred to himself as a metaphysician. He never referred to himself as a scientist or a mathematician.
Mhm.
He was a seeker of the truth
Yeah.
and utilized science as a way in which to communicate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So when we talk about, like, we talk about quantum fields, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and we're breaking down this physical world reality that leads us to a spiritual awakening. Yeah.
Hmm.
How does that how does that inform or support the individual who's on a spiritual path? How does that create openings or an intuition, if you will, around
Hmm.
awakening?
Hmm. I go back to the whole fact of the acceleration because it's really everything. It's the causal fact right now that that as consciousness increases, as the vibration of the physical body increases, we start to have a sense of that perception itself is changing, and and it comes about naturally. It's partly that we get frustrated with how slow things are going,
Mm,
you
mm,
know, and with computers and so forth. There's so much information now. And I've been saying for a long time that I think we're shifting out of the information age into the intuition age,
right.
because the old way of knowing things is very linear, right? It's like A, B, C, D, and there's a gap between each little bite of knowledge, which
Right.
slows down the understanding or integration of knowledge. But with things accelerating, you cannot process that much linear information anymore. There's more information than we can process, in other words, with that old methodology. So we're starting to shift into the right brain. You know, the left brain has what we're addicted to, so,
Yes.
you know, that logical way of thinking.
Analytical way. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is based on separation of information, definition and finiteness and so forth. But that separation is too slow. And so now we're starting to get this, and sometimes it's quite spontaneous, these influxes of direct knowing. That's what I call it, which is also intuition. And
Mm.
it's the right brain way of perceiving reality, where everything exists all at once in one present moment, in one unified field. There is no outside world. The particles of your body are connected to the particles of the air and the furniture and everything. And there's no lines between anything.
Yes.
And we're starting to have this, you know, subtle revelations that these things are changing, that if I'm going to process this stuff and really be successful anymore, I can't just be like academic and intellectual. I have to be both that and intuitive
Yes.
and inspired,
Yes.
you know, and they're coming together and merging, which is again, this merging
Yes.
of
As a,
spirit and physical,
yes. As
right?
above is below.
Yeah.
And yeah, that I believe what we're saying is that our transcendence, our awakening happens with the merging of left and right brain hemispheres,
Yes.
of left and right ways of being. So not to negate either aspect of being because it
Exactly.
leaves us not whole.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's partiality. We're going from partiality into integration and wholeness.
Yes. Yes.
And that means as we make that transition, we're starting to see where we've been very polarized. And if you look at politics today, I mean, my goodness, it's the most extreme kind of thing that I don't know if it can get any more extreme. It's almost like it's already bifurcated into two separate realities,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
it's become comical how extreme it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so something has to shift suddenly there to break that impasse so that we eclipse that opposition and go to the third point up here above that sheds light on the connectedness. And that will happen. I'm not exactly sure how yet, but something's going to happen where that will be the next step because it has to.
Well, don't you believe that obviously is always going to be a reflection of our own ways of being. So in order for us to create that third rail, if you will, of politics, right? You know,
Mhm.
because we are looking really for that party that can come and merge both ones together into a whole collective. That means we get to become more whole in order for us to stand for
Right,
that.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and I think, that part of moving into the intuition age and working with the right brain also means that you're working with the first the connection with the brains, left and right, start to be like a figure eight, and then the head and the heart, and the head and heart and the body, and the head, heart, and the body, and the field around you.
Yes.
We start to integrate more and more of these things because it's all consciousness at different frequencies.
I love that. So let's go into some of this. These are in your books that I really wanted to talk about. Um, uh, First of all, let's just start really basic. How would you describe what is frequency? What is frequency?
Wow. uh, you know I think it's the condition of being alive, in a way. We have oscillation, we have physicalization and involution, and we have going back into the spiritual non-physical realm, which is evolution, and we're just rocking constantly between those realms. The frequency is getting faster because the worlds are coming closer together, right? So we don't have to go as far to get to the spiritual or physical. It's happening more and more quickly. And that means that this whole integration of the non-physical physical is coming into the present moment. There's no past and future. That's all been swallowed up by this huge present moment. And so to me, frequency is the speed at which we make this oscillation, and then of course in the physical world we have frequencies of, you know different kinds of vehicles, different kinds of knowledge, different kinds of light, different kinds of, heat, whatever it
Right.
is.
Well, because my understanding would be frequency is vibration,
Right,
and all energy is vibration,
right,
and all energy starts as vibration, uh,
yeah,
right, and forms into light, and that light then forms into matter.
right.
Would So how would somebody make that connection for themselves and in wanting to raise their vibrational frequency? Like, let's say, what's the benefit? How could they do that? What would be
Yes,
your suggestions?
I think a lot of it has to do with getting out of the left brain, and with the idea of um, creating more fluidity and flow rather than stuckness.
Mm.
The left brain, I mean, it's the champion of stuckness, really, because it defines things. It
It's the
makes
rock.
meaning,
Yeah.
right? This
Uh-huh.
is this. And then
Yes.
once it's defined it doesn't want it to change again. So it starts to make rules.
Yeah.
And then we have beliefs about those rules. And we are like, you know, calcified practically in these ideas. They're ideas that don't flow.
Mm.
So as you can take attention out of those stuck ideas and allow things to have their own fluidity and their own evolutionary process, and let yourself have changing ideas. Do I have to just be this one way? No,
Right.
I'm, I've got all kinds of things in me. Um, so part of it is the idea of allowing um, the openness to evolution, to not be too stuck. And that means opening intuition. That's, I think, one of the first major steps that we have is trusting the intuition that we have, which is, in the early stages, it's very body oriented, right?
Yes.
You
Yeah.
have contraction, which is fear,
Mhm.
and usually indicates something's either dangerous or not appropriate for you, or just not quite right. Or expansion, where you feel energy bubbling and moving, and then you lean toward it rather than pull away, and then that usually indicates something is safe or good, or it's appropriate for you, or you really like it and want it. And
Love
so
that.
we have to learn to read expansion contraction,
Yes.
one of the first things.
So recognizing that we've been living in a very analytical mind and we have a very rigid perspective, viewpoint of our life or who and what we are.
Mm-hmm.
And in that first recognition of self, we get to start asking for more of an intuitive, fluid way of being in relationship to self and our world.
Right.
And what are some steps that we can do to open up that body intelligence even more, or that intuitive way of being that allows for this fluidity to merge with the analytical?
Right. First, I think we have to become aware of subtleties within our body, and I call them, they're states of being, let's say. When it's time to leave the house, because if you stay 5 minutes longer, you're going to be late for your appointment.
Right.
You know when to trust someone that they feel trustworthy or not. There are so many things that we recognize states of being in, but we don't call them out and, as a conscious thing.
Right.
So
right.
part of intuition development, I think, is very simple. It's a kind of mindfulness thing, really.
Yeah.
But I call it noticing what you notice. That go through your day. Why am I paying attention to this? Why did this weird situation just happen to me? And you dialogue with what I call your inner perceiver. That might be the Holy Spirit or your soul or your higher voice or whatever. We have names for it. But I dialogue with it. And well, why did I notice this? And then I answer myself from that place. Oh, well, this is the theme I'm working on today, And so you get in the habit of talking to yourself, really.
Yeah. So it's a beginning of really deepening a relationship with self. And I think responsibility is a big one too. Is like taking ownership, taking responsibility for your innate ability to sense, sensory check or understand your environment.
Yes, and to validate your own wisdom too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, oh wow, I was aware of a lot,
Yes.
and I do know what it means, So you have to start noticing and then validating and then applying that, and then you can start asking questions to yourself. Well, so what do I already know about which job to take? And you can imagine then and use your imagination to go into and project yourself into potential realities. They're not in the future.
Yes.
They're in a different frequency than the one you're in right now.
Well, let's talk about that. Yeah, potential realities. Talk about that and how we create our life from connecting to potential realities that they're not, that they actually exist. That if we can perceive or conceive of it, then it can exist. It's in existence.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, of course, this goes back to physics again, right? To the many worlds theory.
Yes.
That, when you take your attention out of things, everything, all the realities exist, and they're all different frequencies. As soon as you place your attention on one, it starts to come toward you. It's all a function of attention.
Yes.
Not intention, because intention is futurizing something, and it's using willpower.
Okay.
So attention is in the present moment, and it's your way of connecting, really, with any kind of possible reality or anything. It could be a flower, in the physical reality. But anyway, so this is where the lost art of imagination comes back in. We lose it after we get into school. We had plenty of it as little children,
right?
And it gets trained out of us because we go into our left brain. So we have to kind of close our eyes and just think of, well, what would a really great fun thing be for me to do? Or maybe I could have 5 fun things, and just be just wild. What could we do if we could have some of this? And maybe I take these 3 variables and I combine them into one thing. What would it look like? What if I took that one out and put a different one in? Then what would it look like?
As a potential reality.
Yeah. What would it feel like? So then let's say I decided to be an illustrator of children's books who also did seminars and had a podcast. And, I put all these things together. What would that life look like for me?
Right.
And I thought, oh, I would feel really good about that, So you have to have fun playing in the imagination first. Then you place attention into that potential reality and you let your body tell you, do we like this?
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm a big one. I always say self-entertainment is a very high state because really it's joy and it is the natural state of the soul. And it's not selfish. It is that when you stay in that state of, sometimes I call that your home frequency, but that is what the soul in the body, that is the spirit in the physical world. When we're in that state, things are like frictionless. They're beautiful.
Yes.
You get synchronicities and magic.
Yes.
As soon as you get in your left brain, it stops. It's like you get separated from it and then you have to get back in it and now it starts again immediately. Right? But as soon as you place attention into a potential reality and let your body feel it, and if it feels good, if you love it, that reality will love you. And then you get drawn together and pretty soon there it is. You're in that reality in the physical world.
Well, great, because so we, would you say attention is more of the heart-centered presencing of connecting to that potential reality, and intention is more of the mental construct of that in which we're placing our thought process into?
Yeah, I think we have intention confused with choice. There's nothing wrong with choosing and putting your attention into something to choose it.
Right.
But you don't have to do all this work on, I'm forming my intention and I'm holding, just pick a reality, feel into it.
Yes.
Let yourself feel that it is real.
Right.
And that you love it, because that makes the live connection to the thing.
Yes. So
and
attention,
then don't postpone it by putting it in the future, because there's no future anymore.
Right. Right. So attention would be the right brain approach, let's say, and the intention would be more of the left brain approach.
Yes,
Yeah?
I think so.
Okay, great. And however, knowing that we're forming the union between the left and right brain, so that the foundation is the attention, ATT, the attention into the, and then at some point, wouldn't the left brain also merge into that in order to create it in the physical world reality?
Yes. Okay, so the way I do this now is that I go into the full-blown reality in the imaginal realm.
Yeah.
Then I come back to my physical reality now, which is just like an octave lower than the higher one, right? And I say, okay, what can I do right now in this present moment that is of the frequency of that, my new reality?
Yes.
And I do a task, but I do it in the way that it still has the vibration of that higher frequency. Then I take pleasure in that. And it's finished. I go, look at what I did. Had a fun time making that phone call, or whatever. Right. All right. Then I get quiet again and I kind of go back out and I check the vision again. And then, okay, I feel it. I love it. It's still the way I like it. Okay, I'm coming back here to my present moment. What do I feel like doing now? I do another task, but it's coming out of this constant thread of the similar vibration.
Yes.
Right? So that my worlds are getting knitted together.
I love that. I love that. So what's important is there's this weaving. We get to connect to the vibrational frequency of our attention from this potential reality.
Right.
And yeah, it's like we're, what are we yeah, it's like we're going up, we're taking a dip up there and we're bringing it down, and whatever action step we're taking has to be formed from that vibrational frequency.
Yes, and the choice of what to do comes from your left brain.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Out of all the possible tasks I could do, which one feels just right?
Great.
It's not right. It's just right.
That's great.
Right.
So there's the union of those two hemispheres playing
That's
and
right.
weaving
Yes.
together. Yeah.
So the left brain becomes the implementer, right? It is not no longer the master, the guide, the boss,
Yes.
because it's not even in the present moment.
Right.
You
Right.
know, the left brain is in the past.
Or in the future.
Well,
Right.
it's projecting the past onto
Projecting.
the future.
There we go. Yeah.
You know, so it's the right brain and the body that are in the present moment, and the soul is in the present moment. So if you have got to get your mind centered in the body, in the present moment, and relax and open up, and then the guidance from the soul pops through. And also remember that when you start feeling that level of consciousness that we call soul, it is, at one level, it is individual. I have a soul. But when I get into that experience of the soul, it becomes more collective. I realize there are many souls that are vibrating at the same frequency that I am, and that's my soul group.
Mm.
Right? And then maybe that soul group is vibrating at a higher level with other groups, and then I become that. And that's really an evolutionary process, is that we understand that at some level, all the souls become one large, you know, body of consciousness. You know, and down at the bottom of it, in the slowest vibration, we split apart into all these little fragmented particles of individualities, you
Right.
know. Yeah,
Wow.
but so what's happening, you can see it happening now as we were saying, the world's coming together and us merging more. We're starting to have a little bit of revelations about how that works up there, you know, that we're starting to understand collective consciousness. We like groups. We want to be part of our soul group. You know, we want to work together. We have, you know, Facebook friends, and you know, everybody's interconnecting,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And you know, so and I think a lot of processes are, especially organizational ones, are moving away from hierarchy, which is linear,
Right.
right, to flatter systems that are more collective, where everybody has responsibility in a sort of an equal way. And that means also that ego doesn't have a place anymore in the way things are going to be working, you know, because ego is the top of the hierarchy. That's the left brain saying, I'm the boss. And you identifying with the left brain and saying, you know, I'm special. Right?
Isn't it interesting? I find it interesting. Excuse me. I find it interesting when you look at hemispheres of the brain and then you look at like Eastern and Western hemispheres on the planet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And how the East is becoming actually more individualized. They're becoming more, I don't want to, you know, the West has been science, left brain, egocentric, all of that, where the East has always been about the collective.
That's right.
It's always been about the you know, the mother,
Yeah.
you know, mother China, you know, that it's not about the individual, and that how these are shifting actually on the planet as well.
That's right. Well, you know, I worked in Japan for 20 some years, so I'm very familiar with leaving my American identity as a rugged individual, you know,
Right.
and then melting down into the whole collective of Japan and understanding why you don't want someone to lose face, because everyone feels it. You don't do that. There are ways of being considerate to everyone that's so important, and you don't disrupt that harmony. So they are learning now to become more individualized, and we're learning to become more collective.
Yeah.
And you know, and that is the model of, you know, the left right brain merging in each
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because there's beautiful qualities to both.
exactly.
And when we can really bring these together, we will experience an elevated society, culture, or
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right. I wrote a piece a couple years ago about intuition in politics, and talking about how in the early days the values of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, they seemed like left and right brain values, you know,
Right.
and they separated them. but they were all good. They were all noble. They all had, valid points.
Absolutely.
And I thought, well, what would happen if we just put them back together again? They had, you know, all the values. They didn't have to be opposed anymore, and I think that's what we're kind of seeing now, is that the end result of too much isolation and left brainism becomes, ego, and it gets very tight and calcified, and
Yeah.
too much of the other gets very soft and loose and almost victim-y sometimes, in a way.
Well, have we ever had a political leader who was really able to understand, how to speak to both hemispheres of the brain, if you will, Republican and Democrat, that is unifying? It's always been, one candidate can speak to a very specific population, and the other population, basically half the country, gets ignored.
Mm-hmm.
And this just keeps going. So the fear has continued to intensify to the
Right.
point of this polarization
Mm-hmm.
and fragmentation and separation, where literally our country is divided. It is not a united state,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So the United States of being,
Right.
the left and
Exactly.
right brain hemisphere.
Yeah. And all the states we were talking about earlier, all
Yeah.
these little states,
Yeah.
they're all there, and yeah, it's fascinating how the inner realities do reflect out at different levels, right? I mean,
Yes.
at the microcosm and the macro, there are a lot of levels getting out to the large global way of expressing these concepts.
Yeah. And that science tells us that, we, based on our consciousness, create the physical world reality. That literally our feelings and beliefs and vibrational frequency is what informs our creation out in the world.
Yes.
So in order for us to create a unified country and a unified government that represents all, it really is an inside job.
Yes. Yes. And I think part of it is, learning to see the other person's point of view, and realizing that if you're resisting something really severely, it's because you have the same issue underlying that resistance.
Give it an example.
An example might be, okay, somebody who's been sexually abused as a child, they might grow up and one person would become promiscuous and the other would become a prude,
Right.
and they look totally opposite. And they might get drawn together like a victim and a dominator, but
Right.
they still have the underlying issue of that wound.
Yes, that connects them. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and that, if you can see the vulnerability underneath these positions that we defend so much, then we can heal the wound and help heal it in each other. But as long as we blame each other or project our own discomfort onto someone else, it's not going to happen, because we're maintaining the polarities.
It really comes back to, that line where there's always separation, and that when we really make it a circle, if you will, right?
Yeah.
This nonlinear way of being, we see it's connected, that whatever the pain is from the opposing political party viewpoint is, it's our pain in a different wrapping.
Yeah.
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 It's fascinating how it's just all
We'll get there. We'll
connected.
get there, because the energy will take us there. The acceleration on the planet is continuing. It didn't stop.
Right. Right.
And it's going to lift us into those kinds of insights and revelations.
Well, I love that. And let's end on, like, so what is your vision of the future? How does this acceleration continually play out? What's your favorite potential reality that perhaps you've been putting your attention on for the world, for this world and its transformation?
Well, I don't know exactly how it will look kind of physically, but I think that there's a process we're going to go through where there really is a bifurcation of the world. I think that it's very possible that we'll get to a crisis point where a lot of people actually will decide to leave the body one way or another. and that there may be quite a few people dying. But that's not bad. It's that people who can't jump up in frequency to the level where it's going to go will feel more comfortable kind of incarnating again back onto a planet that's of their own vibration. But there will be such a large split between the vibrations that, you know, those who are getting more enlightened or awake or whatever they call it now, will move into a planet that's much higher frequency, and things will operate much more instantaneous. We'll have instantaneous healing. We'll have direct knowing of all kinds of stuff. Whatever you need, there it is for you. You know, we'll take care of each other much more. And so then when we die, we'll incarnate into that planet again. So there'll be two parallel worlds. That's what I've seen. Almost two Earths that are just in the same space, but at different frequencies. And so everybody wins. But there is I've been calling it the bridge time, you know, where we are not quite out of the old one. We're just getting glimmers of the new one. We have dreams and visions, but a lot of the old programming is still there saying, well, it'll never happen, you know, and all the pessimism of the left brain comes in, which is like to keep us in the old left brain reality.
Right.
Right. And we are going through a process of ego death now, where the ego has to let go of the controls, but it's fighting to the death, you know, and it will even kill you. If you identify with the ego, you may end up committing suicide, because when the ego has to let go, then you'll think that you're nothing. It's going to be a crazy time, and we have to maintain stability, centeredness, our home frequency from now on. I mean, and create, I think, to me, I was told that I was like here in Florida, where I don't really fit in too well, to create a clear space in the field of this place. Just don't add to suffering, don't add to fear, don't add to anything. Just if people can vibrate to that level, they find me, you know, and if they don't see me.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I do think things are going to evolve. They have to. We're evolving.
Right.
We're not devolving.
Right.
But what happens, it looks negative because the fear is surfacing now that has been suppressed. It can no longer be suppressed. There's nowhere for it to hide. So it's coming up, you know, in spades. And we have to see through it, you know.
Well, that's the invitation, you know, is welcome the fear. The fear is here to teach you. The fear is here for you to move through it so that you can create a whole new way of being and life for yourself. Yes?
Right. Yeah, I think the fear, remember, it's just a partial view of reality.
Yes.
It's like something happened to you and you got shocked and you stopped and contracted and got stuck in that. You know, that feeling of separation, of alienation, you know, and all of that kind of thing. And as soon as you can see the fear again, you can feel down into it and see, where did you make your mistake of perception?
I like that.
Right. And then correct it, because we're not separate, and we have individuality, but we're all connected in the part that matters, you know.
Fear, could you say that again? Fear is the mistaken perception?
It's a mistake of perception.
Yeah, is a mistake of perception.
Yeah.
And when we shift our perception is when we experience miracles.
Right.
In our life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a miracle, a complete unknown event that is just from a shift of the way in which we perceive.
That's right. And that is because in this new time where everything's in the present moment, you shift your attention and consciousness, and the physical reality immediately responds.
Yes.
Because there's no gap.
Yes.
Right. And that's what we call a miracle, but that's actually natural.
Right. Yeah. Moving and shifting the fear into love, or into
that's right
presence, which I say is love. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
We could just keep going on, and I would love to, hopefully we can continue a conversation again.
Yeah, we can do something
Yeah,
else.
we
That'll be
can,
fun.
I can see we could go on and on, but I would like to let our viewers know, I know that you have a free gift offering for our viewers, and if
Yeah.
you can just explain a little bit what it is and how it benefits them, the link is
Yeah.
right here for them to be able to claim it and connect with.
Right. I did 5 guided meditations for the book Frequency, and they're all really cool, but one of them is the Diamond Light meditation, which is my very favorite thing.
Oh,
And so those can be downloaded from that link.
awesome. Diamond light meditation. I'm all for that. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Penny. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing synthesis of left and right brain, because I know how intuitive you are. I know how empathic you are. And I also know you're, you know, an entrepreneur, a businesswoman, a writer. Like, you
Yeah.
hold both energies so beautifully. And I really am so grateful that you've been part
Thank
of this
you.
conversation in this series.
Thank
And
you.
I'll look forward to continuing again with you.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, we'll look forward to having a whole new group of people. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, uh, see you in that new potential reality that you're creating for and what we're all creating. Thank you so much.